Line. Live! Yay! Okay, we are finally together again.
Finally.
Yay! All kinds of fun. Oh my goodness, it's been a while. There's been babies happening. Lots of babies. So exciting. And we've been doing lots of really in-depth Bible study this last year, and I think we're all like brain fried from it all. So we're going to talk about babies and children and homeschooling, and if we happen to go down some rabbit trails, we might do that. And if you have questions, ask questions. We would appreciate questions. That'll be great. Serious questions, not silly questions. Serious questions. Not that we don't mind being silly, but you know what I mean. The magazine, I have to, the magazine is going to be out next week. We've been working really hard on that. And this is a meaty magazine. So if you're not subscribed to the Prairie Dust Trail magazine and you are the least bit interested in Bible-based sustainable living, this means, it's homeschooling, homemaking, and just, learning how to be more prepared and more sustainable where you are. If you're interested in that, then the information should be in the description, or, message me, email me, look me up, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, and what are you girls up to? I know, Shelly, you guys are looking at a move, and the Lord has blessed you immensely.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I love to see God's people chipping in together and helping each other. That is so wonderful.
Yeah, I am blown away. Like, I never in a million years expected something like this, like an outcome like this.
And I have to tell you guys, Shelly was really struggling with even putting that out there. Okay. We've been praying about this for a while, the three of us together, and she was really struggling with it. So, and I for one was like, that is what the church is for. That is what the believers are for, is to help each other with this kind of stuff. So, we encouraged her. So blame it on us. Blame it on me. I'll take it. Hello, Jared. Hello, Isabella. So nice to have you guys. Yeah. And then Emmy and of course, Shelly and I both have grandbabies now, new grandbabies. She's got her first, precious little girl. And I have my third. I'm an old lady now. And Emmy has baby number 12. And
yes, I do.
All the babies. I love babies.
All babies.
You beat me, Emmy. Hardly anybody beats me. I'm used to always being the winner of the largest number of children. How dare you?
I sorry, I wasn't trying to beat you.
Oh, David. I'm sorry.
I forgive you.
Oh, we have a mother of 5.
Mother of 5. Hey.
Awesome. 11, 7. The 4-year-olds are twins. Oh, that is awesome. I always wanted to.
Yes. I did too.
So blessed. So blessed.
I was like, none of us have twins.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. It's like my other friends that have similar, they usually have multiples, and I don't have any multiples. You don't have any multiples, so.
It's funny because the other family that I know in real life that has 9 children, they do have a set of twins too. But 2 of the questions that I always get from people are they all from the same father? I'm like, yes,
right.
My husband. And do you have any sets of twins? Did you really have all singletons? Yes, I did. And so
yes, I did.
To all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I would have been happy to have doubled mine. I've got the small family here. So with only
Small.
6. I keep telling people, because in the homeschool group, I've actually got a small family and in our homeschool friends around. And so, yeah, I'm like, I've only got 6. And people are like, 6 only? And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's all. I mean, I had a few extras here and there that people would, you never know whenever it doesn't matter if somebody drops off a couple of extras. The more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah, a lot of times I'll say to people that I only have 6 living at home now, and they're like, "Only 6?" And I'm like, "Trust me, you have no idea. It is actually only 6."
Yeah.
Especially since none of them are little now. My youngest is 11, so no more diapers or car seats. They're pretty self-sufficient now.
Yeah, that's a game changer. I'm
You're
sure.
still waiting for that day.
Our youngest
My oldest is 15. Yeah, my oldest is 15. So
yeah.
Wow. Juanita said that hers just graduated. I have one that just graduated. So very cool.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, we've been seeing some things online here lately. Social media. Sometimes, I mean, it's like you have to have it at this point in time, but sometimes it's, it's a thing. It's a thing, right? And on social media, there's been, questions going up about, family size, child spacing, things like that. And the comments that people will get, especially in Christian circles, it seems like if you ask a question about, family size or child spacing or secular circles, then you will get a nice variety of answers, loving answers that are, more open to, what are your goals? What are you trying to do in this? But whenever you're asking in Christian circles, you will get very blatant, either this is what the Bible says, this is how you're supposed to do it, cut and dried, black and white, or it doesn't matter what the Bible says, go to the doctor and do whatever he says, type of thing. And it gets really frustrating. I know Emmy had something recently you need to share.
Oh my goodness! Now you gotta. Oh my. Riddle the brain. I'm like, I've had so many things. Which is the most recent thing?
The large family starter pack.
I know. I was like, that's great. I love that.
I remember when I had my 5th, Kaylin, the one that gave me the grandbaby. When I had her, I was like, I have 5 kids. I really have a lot of kids because my parents had 4. So to me, 5 was a huge amount.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Donita, could you remind me which thing you're talking about? Because I'm like, I've had so many.
You were talking about a group or something that you were in, and somebody had asked about, she was wanting to space her child, her children.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So yes, this woman was asking how, she had read things and all that. She was seeing the recommendation was 18 months, but she's old. She's an older mom and just had her first, and wanted to figure out how to, wants them closer together and not further apart. And somebody who is a research evidence-based practice childbirth educator said, well, they really should be spaced 3 years apart and she listed all this stuff out. And I was like, that's not, she's not asking what she should do. She's asking how to do this healthy. And it's like nobody, and I was like, no, this is, I called her out on it. And then of course she said I was proving her point, to which I said, no, that's control. anyway, basically she's preaching the common research narrative is what she was doing. Because like, yes, having children close together is challenging. I will tell you that until this last one, my average was about 15 months apart. And the problem is that I believed a common narrative early on, so my body wasn't healthy, and so add into all that, all the hormone fluxes and all of that, that's how I got to where I was, versus if I had already been healthy when I started, it would not have been a big deal for me to have that many close together. And because she was like, because the person who said this, who I responded to, the one that gave this is what you're supposed to do because based on the evidence-based research, said, I like basically said, oh, I didn't say that environment and food aren't a factor. That's why you need 3 years. And it's like, no, you need to learn how to take care of your body while you're pregnant. And that's one of the things that is really big for me, and I'm hoping to develop as a course for pre-pregnancy, because so many women are like, they want to get pregnant, but they don't think they don't think about they need to be prepared for that before it happens, because so many are like, oh, I'm pregnant and I'm going to stop eating this and drinking that, and I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, unless you're just one of those women who's like,
it's actually dangerous to make some big changes while you're pregnant or nursing. Because I'm working with somebody right now as a midwife. I'm working with somebody right now, and it's like, oh my goodness, yeah, you need a cleanse, you need a detox and all of this, but you can't do that while you're nursing the baby. So you have to wait until after you're nursing the baby and just do the best you can to be as healthy as possible. But if you throw yourself into detox while you're breastfeeding, that's not good for you or the baby at that point in time. So you've got to be very careful. So yeah, you want to prepare for that before you start having children and start living healthier beforehand. So important.
Yes.
So important.
Yes. And so many just do not realize that. And I think some of it is because of the common narrative, or they're just like, I can eat whatever. Or worse, they get pregnant like, oh, I'm eating for 2, therefore I can definitely eat whatever I want. And it's like, no, because you do so much more damage that way. And I definitely believe that lie early on. I was working in labor and delivery. That's what I was told where I was working.
Well, and some of us can get by with eating quite a bit more. I mean, it's just, if you're eating more of the good stuff, then that's fine. I gained 45 pounds with each one of my pregnancies, but I lost it within 9 to 10 months after each baby was born. So my body needed that, and my babies came about 17, 18 months apart. And I thought that was perfect because they're best friends.
Yeah.
I mean, they get along really good. My brothers and I were 4 years apart, and we weren't close at all. And, in public school, I think made a big difference with that too. But, I loved having ours closer together and having them be friends. And it gave me a break because they kept each other occupied playing together. And
yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was so nice. And I had one of Paul's aunts told me, the third is always the hardest. Once you get past 3,
that's true.
Then it gets easier. And
that is so true.
Yes,
it is.
Because you're outnumbered. That's what I always said.
Yes.
Once you get to 3, you're outnumbered.
And that older one starts helping with the younger ones. And so the older ones start helping with the younger ones. And they play together, they keep each other company, and it starts getting easier after that. And yeah, but then that is not, just because that worked out for us does not mean that's going to work out for the next person, because I know several families that God naturally spaced their children 3 to 4 years apart. One of our daughters, her boys are a little over 3 years apart. And that was just natural. That's what God did. God made that decision. So, I'm not going to argue with God. And I had somebody tell me, you get the comments, all the comments, right, that you get. And I had somebody, an older man, that, I was pregnant with number 4, number 5 at the time. And he said, well, don't you know what causes that? And if you ask a woman that, you're asking for it, okay? So this little man is asking me, don't you know what causes that? I said, yeah, and we like it. Now, I've known this man all of my life, and I know that he used to party with my grandpa, so I know he knew that I knew what caused it, so he just kind of sputtered. I found out from his wife later on that there was only like 11 or 12 months between their 2 boys.
Yeah.
And she said, I thought we were going to have a lot of children, but it was just those 2. That's all they had. And she said, we never did anything to try to stop having any more. We only had the 2. And I'm sitting here, well, that old goat asking me that question. Whenever God was the one that decided how many children he was going to have. It wasn't just because they were only intimate twice in their whole marriage,
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that gets so frustrating is like, because I've known a few families that were spaced like that. I had a nurse one time that she was like, yeah, I always wanted more, but it just never happened. And it's one of those things where they make the comments to us, but then these families are praised for only having 2, 3, 4 children and not having that many. But you don't know that behind that is a heart that wanted more and they weren't given more. And people do not understand the hurt that they're causing, or those that can't have them at all. So they don't recognize the fact that they are actually, like, when they say things to large families, they're also saying things to these other families as well, because you can say, well, we're doing it all the time, like I'm eating cleanly, I'm doing all the right things, why am I not having a baby? And this woman over here, who's not eating healthy and and does whatever she wants to do, and she's having a baby, what, like, and that you take God out of it, and it causes hurts in all directions, not just for large families. But we get the brunt of it because it's obvious.
And they think that they're being funny or that we have never heard it before. But, don't you have cable? One time I had my children at the farmer's market. And I don't think I had all 11 of them with me, but I had a large number of my children with me. And I actually had someone come up to me and say to me, I see that you have all these children, so clearly you need my services. I'm a psychiatrist. Here's my card. So it was, yes. Yeah. And that's probably the worst one.
I am way too cowgirl for something like that. I would have, oh my. Yeah.
And then another time, I was only expecting my 4th. And of course, what did she say to me? She said, don't you believe in birth control? And I was like, no. So.
Well, in our case, I had cesareans with all of ours. So the first 2 cesareans, and it was one of those, once you have a cesarean, always a cesarean, and you should only have 2 or 3 cesareans. So I was told that I needed to have my tubes tied, and I believed the doctor, so I did what I was supposed to do. And when she turned 2 months or 2 years old, I regretted it, something awful, and wanted another baby so bad. And we looked into adopting. They also don't tell you it cuts off the main blood supply to your ovaries. So it threw me into premenopause in my 20s. So by the time I'm 25, I was going through premenopause. And then I ended up having a tubal pregnancy. And we ended up having a reversal and getting to have more babies. But, people would ask later on, and I'm like, we did try to stop, but God overrode that decision. And, and there were times that because of my health in between and stuff that we tried to give a little bit more space. And, there were a couple of times I thought we were done, we wouldn't have any more, but then, we did. And good grief, you don't know what somebody else is going through with this stuff, and
go ahead.
Yeah, I was having a Longaberger party one time, And we had one mom that was just going off about, I am so glad I got my tubes tied. I'm so glad I'm not having any more children, and blah, 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 blah. And we had one other lady that I knew wanted to be married. She was just a little older than me, and she wasn't married yet. And I knew she wanted to be married and having children. So she's having to listen to this. And then another that was married and had been married longer than me and still didn't have any children. She was barren. And, I'm sitting here, you're going off on how you don't appreciate the fertility that God gave you. And if you choose to have to stop and tell God you don't want any more blessings from Him, fine. That's between you and God. Bragging about it and trying to convince everybody else that it's the best decision you ever made is completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
And then I've heard people specifically say that if you have more than X amount of children, that if something bad happens to one of your children, you deserved it for having that many.
Thankfully, I never heard that.
Yeah,
I've never heard that either.
Yeah.
Although they kind of insinuate it when they say to you, well, the reason that people used to have so many children is because they used to not all of them used to survive. Like I've heard that one before. So it's kind of insinuating.
It is insinuated. Yeah.
And even though I have 11 children, I also do know what it is like to struggle with infertility, because I did have some secondary infertility after I had my first one. And I'm going to tell you, it is because I didn't research anything. I was 19, not even 19 when I had my oldest son. So I just did whatever the doctor said, got the Depo-Provera shot.
Me too. Oh, I didn't do that.
So many problems from it. Finally, 2 months later, I stopped getting it already. Just in that 2 months of time, it messed my body up so bad that I was like, we didn't try getting pregnant again right away after I stopped getting it. But when I did try to have another baby, we tried for at least 1.5 to 2 years, like actively tried. Could not have a baby. I remember my son was 5.5 when my second was born. And I would go to pick him up at kindergarten, and I would see these other pregnant moms, or these moms with babies, or I would see mothers with 2 or 3 children. And, it made me sad. And I tried to be thankful that I had the one that I had. But yeah, it was hard. So then when the second one did come, though, we were completely elated and honestly thought that she was a fluke. Like, we just thought, okay. But then I always say she opened the floodgates, because she paved the way for the rest. So thank the Lord for that.
Yes. Yes.
But I do know what it's like, to have that sadness and that jealousy, that envy of other women. And it's not a nice feeling. But, as women, it's innate in us to, well, I should say in most of us, to want to have children, to want to be a mother. And, that's how God created us. And so when I do see people talking about how they're so glad that they didn't have any more children and everything, yes, we need to really think about who we might be affecting around us, and maybe stop, take a breath, and realize just how blessed we are. So
yeah. I absolutely agreed.
Yes.
I know something else. I don't know if you guys have ever run into this, but another thing that can be contentious is like co-sleeping and baby wearing.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys do?
For me, it wasn't, again, I didn't have Instagram and I didn't have all of this information that people do nowadays. I mean, I probably would have. I don't know how long Instagram has been around, but I didn't have all this information. So I didn't know much about co-sleeping. All I heard was the bad stuff about how, it causes SIDS. And, I just, the narrative, just heard all of that. But I found that naturally with a few of my children, I did end up co-sleeping with them, just because that was how they slept best. And it was actually with my youngest that I co-slept with her till she was about 4. And And I remember thinking to myself, wow, if I would have done this with my other children, I bet they would have slept so much better than what they did. Because, babies especially love to be close to their mother, to smell their mother. Um, and that's why they will even tell you, if you have your baby in a bassinet, take your shirt off and put it in the bassinet next to the baby, because the baby wants to be around mama. And, with he's 16 now, but I kind of co-slept with him again, not because I really knew much about it, but he would wake up around 4 or 5 every morning, and we would both go downstairs and we would lie down on the sofa together and fall back asleep again. So now, looking back and knowing all of the things that I know now and realizing how well my youngest slept, I'm like, man, if I did it all over again, I would have co-slept with all of them.
Yeah. What do you do, Emmy?
So we've been a little all over the place. When we started having children, we were both still pretty fresh out of nursing school and still very narrative oriented. But with me going back to the hospital after my first was born for a little bit, I was about 6 months or so. No, it was less than 6 months. Anyway, so I did the night shift, and so when he needed to eat during the day, I would just lie down with him. Like Jim would bring him to me when he wasn't, the nights that he wasn't working, and he would nurse while I was sleeping. And then, Jim would take care of him. So that one ended up kind of weird. And then I got pregnant with our second when he was 6 months old, I think. I don't know. I never started cycling. And so he stopped nursing pretty soon after that, and he was in his bed, and I almost wonder, like, would he have slept better had we, like, fully co-slept. But since we were working night shift, we had a weird, funky schedule anyway, so it was different. And same when Lillian was first born, because we had we were still doing night shift, and then we ended up moving, and so once we moved, we just had her in her own room. And then, the others, it was more like I would put them in their bed and then nurse them, like, whenever they got up, and then they would just stay in the bed with us after that, until, I don't know, probably until we moved into this house. And so the last few, I've done more co-sleeping with. It was still usually, like, a mixture, like you were talking about, Shelly, where I would put them in the bed, and then just whenever they got up to nurse, so I could sleep. Like, I needed to sleep because I had to be able to function. Now, with our last one, I've pretty much completely co-slept with her until recently. And she's still not completely sleeping in her own bed. So, but yeah, she definitely sleeps better, and she's more huggy and all of that. So yeah, I think what you said, Shelly, if I were to go back, I probably would do it more with all of them. I just didn't. I didn't really think about it too much. And I think some of it too was just I think some of it too was just pressure from things that I'd heard from other people and all that, not even so much narrative as just like, well, you need your sleep and all this, so.
And for me, it was probably the fear because of, what we're told about it. But also, I'm going to be quite honest, it was also selfishness because I'm a starfish sleeper. So it would have been, like arms and legs stretched out as far as can possibly be. So I'm like, I don't want to be cramped in bed. But honestly, like, if you're going to get more sleep, if you're all cuddled up with your child versus maybe 2 hours starfished, I'd rather be cuddled up, and get actual sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it just takes realizing that. And for some of us, it takes a little while to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul wanted the children in bed with us. I married a boomer, so I mean, he would spoil them absolutely rotten, and he would still have them all in bed with us, probably. But I move around a lot in bed, and I was worried about, pushing the baby off or something like that. So I would start them out. And Catherine kind of put us on a schedule. We weren't on any kind of a schedule before her. I had my whole life planned out before I married Paul, and he plans for nothing. So, we were just kind of, and I was 19 whenever she was born, barely 19 when she was born. So, she started out in her own bed because she wanted to go to bed by 8 o'clock, and we weren't ready to go to bed yet. So I put her in the crib, and then the first time that she woke up to nurse, then she was in bed with us. And that worked out really well for us because the longer she slept through the night, the more she slept in her own bed. And the transition to her going to her own bed was like there was no transition there. It was great. And then Kristen, our next one, she liked cuddling. She's more cuddly. She's still more cuddly to this day. As a matter of fact, she will whenever they come over to visit. She's the one with the 2 children, and she will bring the baby in and lay down with me whenever I go to bed early and they're still here visiting. So she'll still come lay down with me. But then our third, when he was born, he pretty much just wanted to be in his own bed. He wanted to sleep in his own bed. He was more, so I would, whenever I nursed him, put him in bed with us. And then our fourth, she was a preemie. So she started out in, because she was in the NICU, she was in her own bed. And so that kind of made a difference too, that she preferred to be in her own bed. But then you get the next 2, the last 2, and they wanted to be in bed with us. And so, as a matter of fact, the last one, I don't know how old she was when she finally got out of our bed. So she was older by the time she was in here. And as a matter of fact, I had one of the older ladies in our community ask one time, do they all fit in bed with you? And she called one day, and they had all come in the morning, and they were all in bed with me. I had Paul take a picture, and it was like, we had teenagers and everything, and everybody was in the bed. Somebody was crissy-crossing across the side and stuff. And so, it depends on the family. And Catherine and Stephen, Catherine's very hot-natured, and Stephen's not interested in having the baby in bed with him. He's not comfortable that way. So for them, that really didn't work. Looking back now, she wishes that they would have had one of those little co-sleeper little bassinets that sits up next to the bed, because she said that would have been easier. But she just kind of put her in one of those little rocker things, seats next to the bed. That way that she was close, and Catherine didn't have to keep getting up and down in the night, and that worked for them. So, and then Kristen and her husband and their 2 little ones, the older boy is starting to sleep in his own bed, but they co-sleep most. And so, there's no way that's wrong. No, I think that's exactly the big thing. There's no way that's wrong. There's no one size fits all.
Right. And it doesn't have to be either or either.
Right.
Kaylin, her husband, he moves around a lot in his sleep, so not comfortable having the baby in bed with them. But then when he leaves for work at 6 o'clock in the morning, baby usually comes in the bed with Kaylin and then they'll sleep there for about another 3 hours. So, it can be both and, It doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of how we were. It was like a both and. It just kind of depended on the season and the child and what was going on. Because, we had one that was actually born when we were in transition. So we were actually in my parents' house, and we didn't have a bed. We were sleeping in the living room. So he slept in a little thing in the floor. And then I saw like a funny thing the other day about this. I don't know if one of y'all shared it with me or not, but it's one of the like really funny ladies. And I can't remember her name, but she was being interviewed about co-sleeping, and he was like, I'm pretty sure that Mary co-slept with Jesus. And if we look historically, that's probably true. So it was just, it was, I would have to find the clip to make it like funnier. I'm kind of a letdown from how it was presented, but still, it was funny. Like for when people want to get on to people for co-sleeping, it's like, well,
how do you think they did it? I mean, a majority of people just had little 1 or 2 room houses. You know, you didn't have these houses with all these rooms for everybody to have their own bedroom type of thing. So what do you think they did? You know, they had pallets on the floor.
Still do.
Yes. I mean,
in other parts of the world.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I would happily go. I would love to build a pole barn house and have a dirt cob floor and go back to, you know, what are those Japanese mats that they put on the floors?
Oh, I know what you mean.
Futons. Yeah. I think those are incredibly comfortable, and do that, or hammocks. I'd be thrilled. I would absolutely be thrilled to do that. In the same way with baby wearing. I mean, there's a lot of cultures that have done baby wearing very successfully. You know, as a matter of fact, that the song Rockabye Baby in a Treetop, that actually comes from the Native Americans. Somebody noticed the Native Americans had their babies hanging in trees, and it was very comforting for the baby to be, you know, swinging in the breeze of the tree. And so there you go. And you know, baby comes down, cradle and all, is, you know, baby grows up and stuff. So that was a really sweet story. And I think I shared it in my community, but that was just really sweet, finding out where that song actually came from, because most nursery rhymes do not have such nice history behind them.
No, they don't.
I was happy to find that one actually did.
There's our next video topic, right?
Yeah, nursery rhymes. That would be a good one. I think it would be. That would be a good one.
With baby wearing, you know, I always loved the idea. It never worked for me, just because with some of my children, I was not able to maneuver around as easily as some women can wearing a baby all the time. And then with my youngest, I was absolutely convinced, okay, this is the one. I got this really nice sling. I'm like, I am going to do this with Kenzie. Well, she didn't like being in it. She hated it.
Yeah.
So that's just another one of those things. It does not, and I would never say, oh, well, never. I hate when people say you're holding your child too much. You're going to spoil your baby. No, babies need to be held. I do believe that babies need to be held. But, you know, baby wearing just it wasn't in the cards, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and I had not only cesarean, they were vertical incisions, which takes you a lot longer to recover from. So baby wearing, it wasn't something that I could do right off the bat by any means, because just getting up and down was hard. So, and I healed pretty quickly, but you know, that made it difficult. And then, I had a few of my babies just were not interested in that much physical contact. And then some were. And then the last one, my health wasn't going so well at that point in time. And my husband insisted, because he knew I needed the rest. And he knew if I wasn't holding the baby, I would be up doing things that I should not be doing during that time. So he was insisting that I sit and hold the baby. So I think it is important that you listen to your spouse at the time, because even though he might not know the reasoning behind what he thinks you ought to do, a lot of times he has insight. And later you might look back and say, oh, that's why. I do that so often with Paul. He'll tell me to do something and I'm like, you want me to do that? And he's got no idea why, you know. But later Oh, that's why he was wanting that, because the Holy Spirit will talk through your spouse, whether
Right.
it's a believing
Yes.
spouse or not. The
And
Holy
sometimes they
Spirit.
just can't articulate it because men communicate differently than women do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that could just be
Yeah.
another part. But I
And they
completely agree
don't
with you.
recognize the intuition the same way that we do,
Right.
but they still have it, you
Right.
know. So yeah, definitely listen. Anytime that a new mother has, something like this that she's questioning, what should I do on this? It's like one of my first questions is, what does your husband think?
Right.
Have you talked to him about it? And sometimes he's like, I don't know. And then it's like, well, try it this way for a little bit. And if it doesn't work, try it this way and see what works for you, you know. But be open to that.
Yeah.
Another thing, oh, girls, this is a hard one for me. Preschool. Help me out here. Because I think personally, preschool is just stupid.
Yes. I agree. 100%. Nope. Nope.
I
I
hate
100%
saying
agree.
it, but I do. I'm like, preschool is just stupid.
Yes. Even play-based
Yeah.
preschools, because I'm like, they can play at home. I understand that there are some moms who would put their children in preschool because they do have to get out there and work. But if some people are putting their children in preschool just because they feel they're supposed to put their children in preschool, no.
Or if you're
No.
planning to homeschool and you're worried about what curriculum to use for preschool,
Preschool.
I'm like, I have been doing preschool, Meemaw preschool this summer a little bit, okay? And just to kind of work a few mommies through the, I've been playing dominoes with them. And I got some little plastic tiles that look like, Scrabble tiles with letters on them. And we've been learning sounds. I don't teach letters. I don't teach letters. I teach sounds.
Mhm.
And going through that, teaching them how to spell their names with the tiles, been practicing, like handwriting and drawing circles and things like that. And then sitting down on the floor with them, and I've got little Bible figures to play, and playing the Bible stories with them and things like that. You just really want to, if you want to do preschool with your children, sit down on the floor and play with them.
Yeah. What I used to do with my children was
Yeah.
I would go to the Dollar Tree and I would pick up a few workbooks for them so that when I was doing school with the rest of the children, if they wanted to, if they decided that they wanted to be a part of it, then they could pull out their workbooks. But it was completely up to them. It was never something that I expected of them. I
Right.
also had what I call busy bins, which you can use with younger children too. But I would have a different one for each day of the week, and I would put different activities in each bin. And then when I would be homeschooling the other children, I would pull out the bin for that day to keep that child occupied. And then they feel more involved. And if you're doing things that child can be involved, it's easier to do it this way if you do have more children. I'm understanding that, as realizing it as I am saying it. But that's really what it was. I think that you have to be careful, especially if it is your first child that you're homeschooling and you're all gung-ho and you want to homeschool so badly. That is when you will usually go out and get all the curriculum and everything for your 3-year-old. And that's when you will go get the workbooks and will actually expect your 3-year-old to sit down and do these pages of these, like, whether they're letter books or phonics or math workbooks. And so that can be a danger. When I tell parents, if you're going to go out and get workbooks, let your child decide. Try not to get caught in the idea that your child has to do it every single day, because at 3, 4, even 5 years of age, and probably even a little bit older, they're learning so much more through play and just through living life.
Well, and you
And
need
they're
to
not
remember,
wired to sit like that,
yeah, their attention span is however minutes they are old.
Yeah.
So a 3-year-old, you can only expect to be able to keep their attention for about 3 minutes. A 4-year-old, it's going to be about 4 minutes. Some children are less, but that's a good rule of thumb. So, anything that you're going to do with them, it's going to be a few minutes at a time. That's all you're going to get. So it's those teachable moments. But yeah, I was so excited about homeschooling. And Catherine was 4 years old, and I bought the whole Kono set, not realizing that our library wouldn't have any of the books that it asked for. But we spent the first year building the tabernacle. And I learned so much from that. It was mostly me. The funny thing is, both of the girls still remember it. They were 3 and 4 years old at the time. And I had them color angels on the curtains and, things like that. And they still remember it. But I was the one basically doing it, And yeah, I have a picture of Catherine crying at the desk because I set up the little schoolroom thing, and she was sitting at the little desk bawling. And I have that picture, and I giggle at it now, because that was the day I realized school at home and homeschooling is not anywhere near the same thing.
Yes, and I hate when people call me a homeschool teacher. I'm like, I am not a teacher.
I am not
a parent. But I'm not doing school at home. It's so.
Yes.
Some people do school at home. They do, but that is not what homeschooling generally is.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, though, honestly, if some children, especially again if they have older siblings, thrive on a little bit of structure, but I would definitely tell people, like you're doing, Donita, hands-on activities, play-based activities. I don't know if either of you have heard of the blog Homeschool Your Boys. The author is Michelle Kasky, and I wish I could remember the name of her curriculum, but I actually reviewed it years ago when Kenzie was still 3. And it's a Christian curriculum, and it's really nice because it is completely play-based. And, so I would say, if you feel like you really have to do some sort of structured curriculum, which again, this is play-based, do something that is play-based, or like, Donita is, do your own activities. It's not, don't go out. And I know that there are so many really cool things out there, like, Hooked on Phonics has lots of stuff. Is that even still a thing? I don't know.
I don't know if it is or not.
It's still around.
Teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons is just much cheaper.
Oh, I love that. That taught my last, Luke, Ireland, Summer, Kenzie. That taught my last 4 children how to read. That's what I used with them. And you don't even have to use the 100 lessons. But again, that's something
that way.
Yeah, and it's not something that you really want to, you don't have to do all 100 lessons either with most children. Like, some of mine got it done in like halfway through. But also, you have to gauge it by your child. Don't feel like you have to start doing, teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons with your child when they're 3, 4, 5 years old.
Exactly.
Some children just are not ready to read at that age, and it is okay. The reason that school teaches it at that age is because it's an assembly line. They have to keep the children basically on the same level so that they can teach them in the same way.
It's easier for the teachers when you've got 30 students in the same class. You have to have a specific structure, and they need to do things a certain way. You can use, even if you're going to be sending your children to school, which I do not recommend if you don't absolutely have to these days. But even if you can start them out on that Teach Your Child to Read in 100 easy lessons, they will be so much further ahead just with the concepts. But I didn't learn to read until I was 12. And
Yeah.
some of mine didn't learn to read until they were like 13, 14. We've got eye issues in the family. And some of them learned to read by the time they were 6, you know. But again, it's different children do different things, you know. But yeah, this is a good comment. Don't forget to inspect the workbooks.
Yeah.
Some workbooks are absolutely fine, but you may want to tear some pages out of some of the workbooks that you get
Yes.
at the dollar store these days. So yes, that's a very good point. Very
And
good
that's
point.
actually a good point for even not even just preschool, but online things, pre-online things. Just be very, very careful with
Yes.
those. But yeah, Luke, he didn't learn to read until he was 8, and he was the latest one for my children. And he just, I would try to teach him phonics, and he would not get it. It would not click for him. So I said, we're going to take a break, and we stopped. And I just did other stuff with him,
Hmm.
and then finally, he turned 8 in July, and it was right around his birthday that he said to me, "Mom," he said, "I really want to learn how to read." So that was when I ordered Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons, pulled it out. 2 months later, he was reading Magic Treehouse books, which, okay, literature-wise are not phenomenal, but
Right.
they're chapter books, and he was reading them in 2 months' time. Because when a child is ready, now, yes, some children do have learning disabilities and have some issues. Generally speaking, when a child is developmentally ready to read, they will learn to read quickly. That's at least my
Yes.
experience with my children.
Yeah. Yeah. One of ours is dyslexic, really bad. And I don't even know what kind of dyslexia it is because he's got the best handwriting in the family. He's really good at math. He said sometimes he can't even see the letters. Okay. So it's something in his brain. So, I'm so proud of him because he's in his 20s and he's still trying, right? He's still trying. But you know, we went through Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. He knows the basic phonics, you know, rules and stuff. And so he's got the basics there. So even if you have a child who has, you know, something going on there, then you know, go ahead and go through the stuff, but just help them understand that that's not the biggest thing. You can listen to the Bible in audio. That's the most important thing, you know. And then I aced trig in high school, but God humbled me with Catherine still breaks a sweat at 2 plus 2. So, you know, they're going to be at different stages, and that's okay. You know, the 2 little girls that I've been working with, one of them knows her letters really well. And with just a little bit of help, can spell her name already at 4 years old. The other one knows her colors and her numbers really well, but she's struggling with being able to spell her name yet. So, you know, that's okay. That's okay. You know, at
Yep.
that age, yeah, at that age, the most important thing they need to learn, they need to start learning character. They need to learn obedience because you want to be able to keep them safe. So if you tell them to stop and not run out into the road, or out in our case, we've got snakes, you know, and stuff, I need to be able to tell them to come to me and they need to come immediately, you know, and they need to be attentive. You know, they need to be able to listen to you and to know how to follow basic instructions, very basic instructions. Those are important things to keep them safe. So, you know, work on that first and then start working on hand eye coordination stuff, make some homemade Play Doh, you know, have them help you cook. If you bake bread, have them knead their own little dough of bread, you know, things like that. Have fun with them.
And even making things like making their own Play-Doh, that's something that sticks with them, because my 14-year-old will still pull out the flour sometimes and just make her own Play-Doh. It's something that they remember doing from their childhood. It was something that was fun, and hopefully it's something that they'll do with their own children one day too. But I love doing just those sorts of activities, or spraying shaving cream on a cookie tray and letting them practice, writing with their finger in the shaving cream. There are so many neat activities that you just don't have to expect them to have the fine motor skills. A 3-year-old is not going to have the fine motor skills of a 10-year-old. So, you can't expect them to do things that you would also expect from a 10-year-old. And so many times, you hear children saying that their hand hurts all the time. And a lot of times teachers or parents will think that they just have to get used to it. But when in actuality, it's that their little hands just aren't ready for that yet. Their fine motor skills haven't developed enough for them to be able to grip that pencil for an extended period of time. And that's something that I did learn with my 8-year-old. He's the one who was 8 when he learned to read. He's 16 now. He's not 8. He would get mad if he heard me say that.
Don't they stay 8 forever?
Yeah, I wish. But I strongly suspect that he has dysgraphia. So he would really have fine motor issues. And I would have, at some point, finally, he was just constantly complaining that his hand hurt when he was writing. And I realized that it was because he just wasn't ready. So I immediately stopped the amount of writing. And this is when he was still 8 even. It's not even just 3-year-olds. But I stopped expecting him to write so much. And then you just eventually, over time, and I would just write maybe 3 words in a book, and I would have him trace my words at that point because of his dysgraphia. And that really helped him then to just be able to write more as he got older. But again, we shouldn't expect children who are still basically just coming out of their toddler stages, to do things that older elementary age children do. Just enjoy them while they're young, because they're little for such a short amount of time. And I think that our society just tries to make them grow up way too fast.
Way too fast.
Yes, and just let them be little while they're little.
Yes, definitely. One of my first book that I read was this Raymond and Dorothy Moore, the Successful Homeschool Family Handbook. And I definitely suggest this. This is wonderful. But he explained the difference between classical education and Hebrew education. And that formal education really didn't start until they were 12.
Wow.
Before that, it was learning the Bible stories and whatever they were learning with mom at home. And once they turned 12, then that education was turned over to dad and the men, and or the girls would start, doing more with grandma and the aunts and stuff, and the boys would start, an apprenticeship or something. And so I really use that as a rule of thumb. And he really goes into, interest-led education, that if it's something that they're interested in, they're going to retain the information so much better. I mean, if you think about our education, if it was something that we were interested in, we remember today. If it was not something we were interested in, we did not retain it, right? So I hated history. The only part of history that I really remember from school was the World War II information. That really struck my interest. And it was probably because it was mostly video. We watched a lot of films about World War II. And I think that really struck my interest. I was also just super interested in the Holocaust and all of that information. So I retained that. But I didn't hardly remember anything else, So, catch them whenever they ask those incessant questions. Use that as those teaching moments and say, well, I don't know. Let's look into it. Let's find out, right?
Yeah. My oldest
I have one of those.
He was 3 years old and he was obsessed with snakes. And so he had me read this one snake book to him so much that he could tell you what every single snake was in the entire book. And there's this 3-year-old, knowing the difference between like Egyptian cobras and Indian cobras and puff adders and European adders. And he's 30 years old now, still obsessed with snakes. He did not go into a profession. He did say that he always wished that he would have been a herpetologist. but he's still like, he'll come here to visit and he'll say, okay, who's going to the creek with me? And he'll take my younger kids and they will all go to the creek with him looking for snakes. Actually my 24-year-old is the same way, and my 16-year-old. My boys, like, three of my boys are so similar, and then my other boy, he's not like them at all. One of them is not like the others.
Catherine is like they're nope noodles for her. Nope noodles. She does not like snakes at all. But she's the only one. But she had an experience with when we had some bunny rabbits ready for the 4-H for the county fair, and she was changing the water with the bunnies, and then realized that a rattlesnake was in with the bunnies.
Oh,
And so that experience really caused her. She's afraid of snakes. The rest of them, as a matter of fact, I had a fight with TikTok recently because they had found a hognose snake, which a hognose snake will flatten out its head like a cobra and makes it look, but they're completely harmless. And they're really good about catching mice and stuff. So we love to have them around the farm. And they were just moving it, because the turkeys and the chickens will pick on the snakes. So they had it picked up and they were admiring how pretty it was. And I had to have a back and forth with TikTok. I'm like, the snake was not in danger. We were not in danger. There was nothing, we were not being mean to the snake. And they finally put the video back up, but it's like, oh my goodness.
wow. We have hognose around here. We saw a hognose when we were on the trail the one time too. Like my children, every time we go for a walk, they're looking for snakes and frogs. And again, those are all the things that they're really, really good at, and they'll really remember. Even Kaylin, she's 20. We'll be walking at the canal, and I'll say, "Oh, what's that? Oh, those are perch eggs. How do you know that?" I don't know. Like she was like 15 and correcting me. Look at the turtle sunning itself, Mom. It's a tortoise and it's basking.
That's like James with birds. Oh my word! Or pretty much any animal, he knows what is.
Yeah, I get corrected by my children all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it.
Yes.
I love it. In homeschooling, I've learned so much doing it. It's been an adventure. It's been so much fun. I can't imagine, I don't understand why people don't want to. I understand, that some people are stuck in a job and, need to have work, but it really only takes about 3 hours a day to homeschool.
If they're really little, not even that.
Not even that when they're little, definitely. And the older they get, the more they do on their own.
Yeah, they're independent then.
Yeah.
They're independent. Yeah.
I tell people it's my job to teach them how to read. I teach them how to read and then they learn how to learn.
And they do. Yeah.
All they need, if they know how to read, like, it just opens a new world.
It does.
But it's such a humbling experience though, being a homeschool mom, because I feel at times that I put in a lot of effort, to teaching my children different things. And then when you realize that the things that they remember most are the things that they learned on their own most of the time because they were really interested in them. It's a very humbling experience because while, I still think that it's important to introduce your children to certain things and everything, in the end, it's not so much you, the homeschool mom, but the if you are able to facilitate your child's interests, that is the most important thing, is being that facilitator. Maybe not always standing there instructing them, lecturing them, thinking of yourself as a teacher. Like, you want to try to get away from that when you are homeschooling and be more of a facilitator. Just make the proper arrangements for your child to be able to learn about the things and support them in that. That's really the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people disagree, but in my opinion.
I agree with you. I absolutely do. And, the children that do good in the institutions are the ones whose parents are homeschooling after school. and usually teachers will tell you it's the children whose parents are involved do better, you know. So that's whether you feel like you can homeschool or not. If it's something that you want to do and you struggle with that, then please reach out to one of us, because God can provide a way for your children to be homeschooled. Somebody in your community is probably just waiting to help you with
Yeah.
that. So, we would be happy to pray with you about it and brainstorm with you so that you can. But if it's something you just really don't feel like God has got you at that point yet, then be involved. Be involved. Very important.
Yeah, it just don't rely on the teacher to teach your child everything, because school it's not going to teach your child everything. First of all, because there are an endless amount of things to learn about. There's no possible way they could teach your child everything. Second of all, they're not going to tailor the education to your child's interests. That's something that you as the parent can do. Um, and there might be limits to how well you can do that, but you can certainly do it better than a teacher can. And they're not going to teach your children about the Lord in school either, unless they go to a Christian school. If they're in a public school, that's not going to happen. And again, that falls to you as the parent. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you are your child's discipler.
Yeah.
That is
Definitely.
so huge. That is like all what we're all about. Oh my word. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can be prepared for college or a job or a trade or whatever and everything. But if they're not prepared for eternity, that is the most important thing. We want them ready for eternity. Attack whenever she was 6 years old. And thankfully, she is still with us today. But thankfully, also, I had made it my goal to make sure that they were prepared for heaven as early as possible. So, definitely work on that as first. That's first. Teach them about the Lord. Read the Bible to them. If you don't know how to do that, Emmy has some wonderful stuff on doing, Bible studies as a family and everything. Definitely reach out to her. Leave a comment if you're wanting some of that information. She can leave that for you. And Emmy and I are working on a homeschool curriculum together. If that's something that you're interested in, leave a comment about that, and we'll get you some information, point you in the right place. Yeah.
I'm amazed. How do you ladies have time for this? I'm sitting here. I'm like, this is the first time hearing about this.
Really?
You have
I
more
don't
hours in
know.
your day than I do. 'Cause
Well, I have all of the information on my blog. I've been
Oh,
blogging for 30 years, okay,
yeah.
about. And so I've got everything homeschool. So I mean, it's all free. If you guys want to look, I'm fixing to shut down my blog. I'm fixing to take everything off of it. So if you guys want to go look there, it's all free right now, and you can dig through there. But yeah, I'm in the process of taking everything down from my blog and putting that into a curriculum. And Emmy and I are working together on how to get that set up so it's useful for people from pre-K through, graduation. So yeah, I've been there. I've done it. So I might as well share
I'm
it.
in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same, but I don't. Actually, my youngest is 6th grade now, so I am officially old. I have no elementary age children anymore. So.
I feel you.
I have literally every stage except for like an adult. Like I have every other stage you can have right now. So
Yep. Yeah. Too much fun. Too much fun. Okay. Any closing thoughts, ladies?
I just want to reiterate what I said before. When your children are little, just cherish that time. They always tell you only have 18 summers with your child. You have about 3 summers with them being these little tiny explorative. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm just going to pretend that it is.
Mhm.
But they're little scientists. They're little explorers. Just let them be that. Because John Holt is another great resource. Learning all the time. It's secular, but he basically says that once you start expecting and telling your children what they need to learn about, that is when they will slowly start to lose interest in the world around them, and then they start constantly being expected to be told what to do. So just, it's a fine line. Yes, there are things they have to learn. Always give your children lots of time to learn about the things that they love.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And I would say, can I have my really quickly just
uh-huh.
pray over everything? Just pray over
Yes.
everything, because
Amen.
that is so huge, and because that's going to help you with all of that too. Because there are some things that like they may be interested in that are it's unrealistic. So you let them experience as best as you can, and you just have to pray for the opportunities to come when they can step into it more. Or maybe one of those things that God's like, you know what, they don't need to be involved in this, and so we're gonna, my thing is, sorry, my internet's going crazy.
Yeah.
But then you pray for a different a thing that, so just pray. Remember, God knows your children better than you do. So
Yes.
Yeah. You can't do it without the Lord. I mean, not that people don't homeschool, secularly, but I cannot imagine homeschooling without God.
Yes.
I just cannot. So yeah, definitely invite him in there on
Yes.
that.
Agreed.
Perfect. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for this. Sorry, guys, we weren't going down any, crazy things. If you'd have been asking questions, we might have done that, but there were no questions. So
Don't encourage them; they'll do it now.
I know. Good. It's been fun just to kind of, all three of us are very, feel very strongly about homeschooling. I've got my homeschool t-shirt on, homeschool mom. Yeah, Catherine got that for me. But yes, and we appreciate your prayers. Thank you so much. But yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and maybe next time we get together, we will, go through a Q&A or something. I would love to do that. And once our brains catch up with us, then maybe we'll do something a little bit more in depth next time. Talk about Bigfoot again or something like that. Maybe those dragons.
Or the origin of nursery rhymes. Let's not forget
Oh, yes. We need to write that down. The origin of nursery rhymes. I think that would be a good one.
It would be. That's going to take some research for me, because I don't know all of it off the top of my head. So I know some of it. But.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I'm writing it down so we can remember to do that. I think that would be fun. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. And thank you all who came. And remember, you can make it through the dust storms of life with God's divine help.